This is called a dado or rebate or housing joint, depends on what country you come from, and it's a very strong yet very simple joint to be used in woodwork. Here's how it's done. Firstly, you'll have to raise your saw blade to make a partial cut through your work, and I find the best thing is to mark the dimension on a block of wood and then put it alongside the saw blade slot and then raise the blade until the lowest tooth is just opposite the pencil line, then lock the saw and remove the block. Now I often find myself doing these on pieces 2 and 4 at a time, and so I've taped my pieces together with the ends in line using very thin ducting or masking tape which won't actually pack you out from the fence, and I've only marked one of my pieces, the one that's going to be closest to the fence, with the defining cuts of where I want my rebate. Now you may be wondering what this packing spacer is for. That's just a parallel-sided piece of MDF which has been G-clamped to the table, or it could be screwed to the MDF subfences. And when my blade was at full depth, I made a cut through there to ensure that this edge is exactly in line with my blade notch. So I can now use this edge to sight up alongside my pencil marks. The other reasons for having this spacer is that it's lower than the MDF fences, so I can wrap my fingers around the wood, keep better control of it, and still be nice and square to my work centre. And it also brings the work a lot closer to me, so I'm standing almost vertically, and that's good for back strain problems. So now I can sight up, allowing for my first saw blade cut. I can sight up my pencil line near the MDF subfence and make my cuts. Well, that almost fits. You should always check when you get close to your line. Now the way to ease that out very slightly is to put it back in the machine, slide the saw blade into the middle of the trench, push the wood against the saw blade and slightly deflect the blade, and then you can pull the saw back and go through under power and take out a skimming cut. And there you have it, a lovely tight-fitting rebate joint. And I've done 2 of them, both of them identical. A few quick operational points about doing the trenching safely. Firstly, did you notice how I was getting my incremental movement across by pivoting the wood on this corner here and just using that to gauge my 2.5mm increments? Now that's fine, except make sure you don't get any sawdust packed up in there, which could end up packing the wood out very slightly, getting you slightly out of square to the work centre. Also, make very sure that you don't make any adjustment to the wood until the saw is fully clear of the cut. In other words, don't try to move the wood while the saw's in motion or in the cut itself. The saw blade teeth could pick up the wood, grab it, and cause an accident. And finally, if your saw has got a fair degree of movement up and down because of inadequate mountings between the saw and its own base plate, then we do recommend that you use a locked-on trigger technique and push the saw by the slide chassis. That way you'll get a completely even depth of cut. You won't be influencing it by any hand pressure that you put on the saw motor. You might also find, if you've got a saw with sloppy mountings and you don't have the saw stabilizer bracket, that you've got a good degree of saw wobble when you're raised up. Well, if that's the case, make this cut with the saw blade fully locked down in its most rigid and secure position, and achieve your adjustment by loosening these 4 knobs at each corner and dropping the work centre table an equal amount until you achieve the desired amount of uncut material. Otherwise, just use the adjuster on your saw. It's much easier and faster, as you've just seen a few moments ago. If you want to rebate a piece of wood that's taller than will normally fit between the table and the bearing channels, then lower the table equally at all the 4 corners, and I would also extend my subfences until they're high enough to give me good support for this to stop it from rocking when I'm doing the series of cuts through here. If you've done a couple of rebates like this, then by simply putting them face to face like so and gluing or screwing them together, you've created a square mortise. And that's really useful in furniture making. For example, this is the way this piece was made, 2 open rebates joined together, and it's a lovely tight-fitting post and rail type construction which you could use on a table or a bed head or many other applications in your carpentry.